Her Instagram was clean. Her coworkers wasn't. That's the line that keeps echoing in my head. The line that marked the start of the end. But before I ever scrolled through those pictures, before my chest tightened at what I saw, there was us. A marriage built on what I thought was trust. We'd been together for nearly a decade, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you we were steady. Not perfect, no marriages, but solid, in the way couples become after years of weathering the small storms together. She was the organized one, the planner. I was the quiet one, the steady anchor. We balanced each other. At least that's what I believed. I worked long hours, but so did she. She had climbed her way into a management role at her company, the kind of position she'd worked hard for since college. I was proud of her, and I told her often. Maybe too often in hindsight, because I didn't notice when those words started rolling off her like water off glass. No longer absorbed, no longer needed. We had our routines. Coffee in the morning, sometimes rushed, sometimes lingering if neither of us had an early meeting. Dinner most nights, even if it was takeout on the couch. Weekends with errands, family visits, maybe a night out if we felt like shaking things up. It was ordinary, but ordinary in a way that felt safe. That's why, when she first mentioned a work trip, I didn't blink. She said it casually while folding laundry, as though it was just another bullet point on her list of responsibilities. I nodded, supportive, because that's who I was. That's who she had trained me to be. I didn't know then that this trip would tear open the seam of everything I thought I knew about us. That my trust, the same trust I had leaned on for years, would be the very thing used against me. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment the ground started to shift beneath me. But at the time, it was just a simple sentence, spoken over the hum of the dryer. I'll be gone a few days. It's a work trip. The announcement grew legs over the next few days, becoming more than a casual line by the dryer. It became an itinerary. Flights, hotel, a block of meetings, a team dinner, optional happy hour. She laid it out with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times, even though her role didn't usually put her on planes. That was the first detail I shelved without examining. She managed the folks who traveled. She rarely needed to go herself. She said it was a regional strategy summit. 3 days, 2 nights. Fly out Wednesday morning, back Friday evening. The city wasn't far, just a short domestic hop, but far enough that the distance felt like more than miles. She showed me the calendar invite on her laptop. Company logo up top, agenda broken into clean blocks. It looked official, and official things are easy to believe. I watched the way she prepared. It wasn't thrown together. It was curated. A new carry-on appeared at our door, sleek, sand-colored, the kind you see in minimalist ads. A garment bag emerged from the back of the closet, with 2 dresses I didn't recognize tucked in their plastic sleeves. She lined up travel-sized bottles on the bathroom counter and refilled each one with practiced precision. None of it looked improvised. It looked rehearsed. Her tone shifted, too. She became brisk in the mornings, almost ceremonial with her time. Coffee went from a shared pause to an item checked off the list. She answered my questions in clean, short sentences that gave no room for follow-ups. The message was gentle but clear. She was busy, and I should not crowd the edges. I tried to be the man I'd always been, supportive, easy, reliable. I asked what she needed. I offered to drive her to the airport. I told myself this is what trust looks like in practice. No suspicion, no second guessing, just a nod and a smile. It's strange how quickly trust can start to feel like silence you're forced to keep. Packing told me more than words. She built 2 neat stacks on the bed. One wearable in conference rooms under fluorescent light, the other meant for dimmer rooms, textures that caught light, silhouettes that belonged to nights, not days. She added a small perfume she never wore to work, a bolder one with a warm finish that lingered in doorways. She slid heels into dust bags, the kind of shoes that make sense when there's someone to notice them. Her phone's habits changed in parallel. It moved with her, an extra limb. When she scrolled, the screen tilted away almost unconsciously. She had always been open with her devices in a casual way. We'd hand phones across the couch to show each other something dumb. Now every notification arrived behind a small, thoughtful barrier. Her thumb, the angle, the lock screen. These are small things, the kind you can ignore if you want to keep sleeping. 2 nights before she left, she claimed she had to finalize a deck with a teammate. She set up at the dining table and opened slides that looked real enough, market segments, color bands, bullet points. But the eyes tell more than the screen. They moved to her phone more than to the laptop. The corners of her mouth curved at messages I couldn't see. Work rarely smiles back like that. I caught myself bargaining in my head. It's a big quarter, they're pushing hard, management wants FaceTime. These were the phrases I fed the part of me that had started to take notes without a pen. The morning of the flight came quietly. She stood in the doorway in a soft blazer and quiet jewelry, the new carry-on angled beside her, the garment bag draped over her arm like a promise. She looked composed, in a way that suggested rehearsal, not rush. I noticed the way she glanced at the hallway mirror longer than usual, as if checking more than symmetry. I drove her to the airport. The highway was empty in the blue-gray light, and the terminal had that early hum of wheels and murmurs. She checked her bag with efficient movements and looped the carry-on strap over her wrist like it belonged there. When I offered to wait until she cleared security, she shook her head with a soft smile that meant you don't have to. At the curb, we held the standard goodbye. A brief hug, the quick press of lips that says, "We're fine." Her eyes were bright, not with nerves, but with a kind of forward pull. She walked through the sliding doors, and I watched the glass swallow her reflection. On the drive back, the car felt hollow in a way it hadn't before. The seat where her bag had rested looked too neat. The scent of her new perfume lingered in the air vents, a warmer note than her weekday fragrance, staying long after she was gone. It felt like a detail I shouldn't have noticed, which is exactly why I did. Work should have been the distraction it always is, but minutes moved slower. I checked the clock, then the shared calendar, then the clock again. I told myself not to be ridiculous. People fly to meetings. People go to dinners after meetings. People post smiling photos from conferences and come home with lanyards and exhausted jokes. The story is as old as offices. That evening, I opened Instagram without knowing what I was looking for. Her profile was clean. A locked grid, a recent post of a latte, nothing that said out of town. She had been careful long before I noticed. I scrolled through mine mindlessly and closed it again, then opened it once more minutes later, because restlessness doesn't accept first answers. I thought about our earlier years, trips where we sent each other photos of the things we wished the other could see. Back then, we narrated our separate moments like the other was still in the room. Somewhere along the way, that narration stopped. Now the gap had grown legs and a boarding pass. When night settled, the house felt wider, the rooms longer. I heated leftovers in a pan and ate standing by the counter the way people do when no one is watching. My phone lay face up on the table, a loyal screen throwing light at an empty chair. Before bed, I walked through the rooms the way you do when you're the only one home. Lights off, door checks, the small ritual of making the quiet behave. On the dresser, the space where her jewelry dish usually sat was clear. She had taken the dish with her, just a little travel version with soft felt and clean edges. It's a normal item to pack. It's also a plan. I lay awake longer than usual, listening to the heater turn on and off, letting my thoughts circle without landing. Trust is a habit. It takes the same shape for years, so you learn to lean your weight against it without checking the beam. You don't tap it with your knuckles. You don't ask it to prove itself. You just lean. Around midnight, a plane passed overhead, a dull, moving thunder. I pictured her in another city, a hotel hallway with patterned carpet, a keycard light blinking green. I pictured her in a conference room with bad coffee and too much air conditioning, or in a bar where the lighting forgives everything. I told myself a story I could live with for one more night. She was working. She was tired. She would text in the morning. In the morning, she did. A photo of a skyline from a window, glass reflecting glass, a caption with 2 words, "Long day." It was the kind of message that keeps a thin line intact. It also made me open Instagram again, not to her profile this time, but to the search bar, then to the list of names I knew she worked with. People post more than they realize when they're not thinking about who's watching. I didn't know what I was looking for yet. I only knew that the first place that would tell a different story would not be hers. Her Instagram was clean. Somewhere, I thought, someone else's wasn't. I left the app, made coffee, and sat with the mug warming my palms. Trust and attention share a border you don't notice until you've crossed it. I was on the other side now, not because I wanted to be, but because the map had shifted without telling me. The trip had begun. The distance wasn't measured in miles anymore. It was measured in what would show up on other people's screens. When she first mentioned the work trip, I didn't think twice about it. Lisa worked in marketing, and travel wasn't uncommon in her field. She came into the living room one evening, suitcase catalog open on her lap, and casually said she'd be in Chicago for a long weekend. Supposedly, it was some kind of training seminar hosted by one of their clients. Her voice carried that air of professionalism, the same tone she used when telling me about campaign launches or budget meetings, so I didn't question it. She even tossed in a quick detail about how the hotel would be near the convention center, how long the sessions would run, and how she wouldn't have much free time. It all sounded rehearsed, now that I look back, like a script carefully designed to deflect suspicion. I nodded, smiled, wished her good luck. That was my mistake. I trusted her without hesitation. We'd been married for 7 years, and despite the ups and downs, I had never once thought she'd step outside of our vows. In the days leading up to her trip, though, I noticed a shift. Lisa seemed lighter, almost giddy, like someone preparing for a vacation rather than a business obligation. She spent more time in front of the mirror, trying on outfits that didn't fit the mold of a corporate seminar. Short dresses, bold heels, perfume she usually reserved for anniversaries. When I asked if she was overpacking, she laughed it off and said, "Better to be prepared." I wanted to believe it was innocent. Maybe she just wanted to look good in front of colleagues. Maybe she was treating the trip as a reset. But part of me felt the first small tug of doubt, a thread I should have pulled at right then. The morning she left, I carried her luggage to the car. She kissed me quickly, a little too quickly, and promised to call when she landed. As I watched her drive off, suitcase rolling in the trunk, I told myself not to overthink. Work trip, that's all it was. Still, I couldn't shake the odd smile she wore when she pulled out of the driveway. That was the beginning of the unraveling. She landed, or at least that's what she told me in a text around noon. Just got here, long day ahead, followed by a plane emoji. No photo of the hotel room, no quick snapshot of the airport, none of the casual little things she usually sent me when traveling in the past. It was bare bones, efficient, almost like it had been drafted ahead of time. That night, I called her. She didn't answer the first time. A few minutes later, she texted, "Sorry, in a group dinner, can I call later?" The wording stuck with me. Lisa hated group dinners. She always complained about being stuck with colleagues after hours. But now she made it sound like a highlight. Later never came. By the time I was in bed, her phone was still silent. I told myself not to read too much into it. I closed my eyes, but sleep came in shallow waves. The next day, she sent another brief update. Busy schedule, exhausted already. That was it. No warmth, no curiosity about how my day went, no little jokes we used to trade. Just words typed out like obligations. I scrolled through her Instagram that evening. Nothing. Not a single update. For someone who loved to post her hotel views, airport selfies, and latte art, the silence was strange. Lisa was careful, but not like this. Something tugged at me. Something I didn't want to name yet. That's when the thought hit me. If her account is quiet, maybe her coworkers aren't. I opened the search bar and typed in names I'd heard her mention. Coworkers she occasionally tagged in photos from the office. One by one, I checked. Most had public accounts filled with ordinary stuff. Dogs, kids, memes. Then I clicked on one of her newer colleagues, a girl named Megan, who seemed to document everything.
And there it was. A story from the night before. A loud restaurant, glasses clinking, plates scattered. In the corner of the frame, blurred but unmistakable, was Lisa. She wasn't in her conference clothes. She was in one of the dresses I'd seen her pack. Her head was tilted back in laughter, her hand resting casually on the arm seated beside her. The camera had caught only half his face, but it was enough. He wasn't someone I recognized. Not a coworker I'd ever heard about, not a client I'd been told of. His body language was too comfortable, too familiar, the kind of lean you don't have on day one of a business trip. The story disappeared in seconds, but the image burned into me. Lisa's Instagram was spotless. Her coworkers wasn't. And that was only the beginning. Once you see one crack, you can't unsee it. That first Instagram story replayed in my head 100 times, even though it had vanished within 24 hours. I couldn't save it, couldn't freeze it, but it was burned into my memory. Lisa in her cocktail dress, leaning in too close to a man whose arm brushed hers like it belonged there. I told myself maybe it was innocent. Maybe he was just a colleague. Maybe she was laughing at a joke shared across the table. But the thing about doubt, once it lands, it never stops moving. That evening, I opened Instagram again. Megan had posted more. This time, it wasn't blurry. It was a boomerang clip, just a few seconds long, of the group clinking glasses. Lisa was at the center of the shot. She looked radiant. Hair down, makeup brighter than usual, a glow I hadn't seen in months. And there he was again, the same man beside her. His glass lingered against hers longer than everyone else's, their smiles catching at each other instead of the camera. Still, I might have brushed it off if it ended there. But curiosity became habit. Every few hours, I'd check again. And every time, Megan seemed to have something new. Snippets of the work trip that Lisa never showed me. A group photo in the hotel lobby, Lisa standing closer to him than anyone else. A dinner table shot, his arm draped casually along the back of her chair. A blurry dance floor video, Lisa spinning, her face lit up, his hand at her waist steadying her. It was all subtle enough that someone who didn't know her might not think twice. But I knew her. I knew the way her smile softened when she wanted to impress. I knew the way her hand brushed people when she wanted to feel wanted. I knew because I had been that man once. Her messages to me stayed cold, clinical. Just finished up, long day. About to crash, early start tomorrow. No details, no warmth, no little jokes we used to trade. Just words typed out like obligations. I had more details than I wanted from strangers who didn't even realize they were handing me evidence. By the second night, my stomach was tight with the weight of it all. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed more than snapshots. I needed undeniable proof, the kind that left no room for her to spin it into something it wasn't. So I kept watching, quietly, patiently, waiting for her coworkers to post the truth she worked so hard to hide. Because the more she cleaned her own profile, the dirtier theirs became. And I knew it was only a matter of time before I saw something I could never forgive. By the third night of her work trip, I wasn't sleeping right. My phone stayed on the nightstand, screen dimmed but ready, like I was waiting for an alarm that never came. Every few hours, I'd check Instagram again, scrolling through coworkers' accounts with a kind of quiet obsession. And then I found it. It wasn't a story this time. It was a full post, the kind that stays. Megan had uploaded a carousel of photos with a caption like, "Networking and team bonding, hashtag work hard, play hard." I opened it, thumb hovering with hesitation, like I already knew what I'd see before I saw it. The third picture froze me. Lisa sat at a long table, wine glass in hand, her head tilted toward him, toward that same man who'd been at her side in every candid shot. But this time, there was no mistaking it. His arm was wrapped around her shoulders, not in a friendly group photo way, in the way a man claims space, in the way you lean into someone who belongs to you. Her smile was different, too. It wasn't the polite, professional smile she wore in holiday cards or at office parties. It was the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. The smile of someone being seen, wanted, chosen. I stared at the photo so long my screen dimmed.
When I tapped it awake again, the image hit me harder, like a punch that gets worse the more you replay it. The comments were harmless. Looks fun. So jealous of you guys. Team goals. None of them saw what I saw. None of them had lived in her world long enough to know the difference between casual and intimate. To them, it was just a group trip. To me, it was proof. I set the phone down and just sat there in the dark. My chest felt heavy, like all the air in the room had been pulled out. For years, I had told myself we were solid, that we were past the stage where people strayed, that we had built something stable. And yet, here it was, unraveling on a stranger's Instagram feed. Part of me wanted to call her right then, to ask where she was, who she was with, why she looked so comfortable in someone else's arms. But another part of me, the quieter, colder part, told me not to, not yet. Anger would give her room to maneuver. Silence would give me control. So I didn't call. I didn't text. I let her send me her empty little messages about long meetings and exhausting days, and I responded with short, neutral replies. All the while, I kept gathering what she didn't want me to see. It's a strange thing, watching your marriage collapse not in your own home, not through fights or slammed doors, but through filtered photos posted by people who barely know you. Every upload was another cut, and yet I couldn't look away. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just a trip. This was the truth finally slipping through the cracks. And I wasn't done watching. Not yet. The photo of his arm around her should have been enough. For most people, it probably would have been. But for me, it was like standing on the edge of a cliff and knowing I had to see how far the drop went before I jumped. The next day, I checked again. Megan, ever the eager poster, didn't disappoint. A flood of new photos went up. Team lunches, group selfies in the hotel lobby, quick clips of cocktails at the bar. I scrolled through each one slowly, scanning not for Lisa directly, but for the man who seemed glued to her side. And sure enough, there he was, always there. In one short clip, Megan had filmed the group laughing as they walked down a busy city street. Lisa and the man were behind the others, a little separated, like they'd drifted off into their own world. His hand brushed hers, then lingered, their fingers almost locking before she pulled away. But not fast enough, not like someone embarrassed, more like someone who knew the moment might get caught. Another photo sealed it further. A dimly lit restaurant, half the group raising their glasses to toast. Lisa wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at him. That same smile, that same light in her eyes, the one that used to be mine alone. Her hand rested on the table, close enough to his that anyone looking could have mistaken them for a couple. I sat back, staring at my phone like it was a weapon. It wasn't just pictures anymore. These were patterns, habits, choices. She wasn't lost in a one-off moment. She was choosing this over and over. And all the while, she sent me texts about being too tired to talk. I didn't reply to her last one. Something inside me had shifted. I realized that if I confronted her now while she was away, it would turn into excuses. She'd spin the story, twist the photos, say it was just coworker fun. No, I needed her in front of me, with nowhere to run. That night, I sat in the silence of our living room scrolling through her coworkers' feeds again. Each new post was like a breadcrumb leading me further into the truth. And with every click, my anger grew colder, sharper. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a man documenting the unraveling of his own marriage through the lens of strangers who had no idea what they were exposing. And I knew with absolute certainty that when she came home, I'd have all the evidence I needed. By the fourth day of her trip, I'd stopped waiting for her calls. The pattern had become predictable. Short texts, vague excuses, no photos, no warmth. She was careful with me, almost too careful, like someone walking across thin ice. But she couldn't control what others shared. So that's where I turned. Every night after work, I sat in the dim light of the living room with my phone in hand, scrolling. Screenshots became my habit. Each time I saw Lisa too close to him, smiling in a way that wasn't professional, I captured it. Each boomerang of glasses clinking, each group photo where his body leaned towards hers, saved, documented, stored. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with it all, but I knew one thing. If she tried to deny it, I'd have proof she couldn't talk her way out of. The thing about patterns is they start to reveal themselves the more you look. She wasn't just with him, she was orbiting her. Always positioned near him in group shots, always looking at him when no one else noticed. At first, I thought I was reading too much into it, maybe twisting things because I was already suspicious. But the screenshots stacked up, each one a small cut, until the pile itself was undeniable. One post hit harder than the rest. It wasn't from Megan this time. It was from another coworker, someone Lisa had mentioned in passing months ago. A short video of the group dancing in what looks like a hotel bar. The camera panned across laughing faces, clinking glasses, flashing lights. And there she was, Lisa, twirling under the dim glow, his hand steady at her waist, guiding her. She looked alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Carefree, giddy, herself, but not the version she showed me anymore. I saved that one too, and for a long time after, I just stared at the frozen frame. It wasn't just his hand on her waist, it was the way she leaned into it, the way her body curved naturally towards his, as though it belonged there. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected, not feared, knew. I didn't text her that night, didn't even open her last message about being wiped out from workshops. Instead, I sat there in silence, the screenshots lined up like a quiet army in my gallery. Proof she couldn't erase, proof she couldn't spin. And for the first time in days, I felt calm. Not the kind of calm that comes from peace, but the calm that comes before a storm breaks. The calm of someone who knows the fight is already over. The other side just doesn't realize it yet. Every night, I sat in our house, in the same living room where we used to watch movies, curled up together, and I imagined her walking back through the door. I imagined her face when she realized I knew. Would she deny? Would she try to spin it as team bonding? Would she cry? Or would she go cold, the way she had with me? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. I wouldn't be yelling. I wouldn't be begging. I wouldn't even be arguing. I had learned something in those long days. Sometimes silence cuts deeper than any shouted accusation. Sometimes calm makes the guilt unbearable. So, I waited. Patient, deliberate. The house felt different, heavier somehow, as if it already knew what was coming. Our bed was emptier than ever, not just because she wasn't in it, but because the version of her who had once been mine was already gone. I stopped checking coworkers' posts after the 5th day. I had enough. More than enough. The evidence no longer mattered. I wasn't building a case for a jury. This wasn't about convincing anyone else. It was about the truth between her and me. And I had everything I needed. When her text finally came, landing tomorrow evening, can't wait to be home, I stared at it for a long time. The lie inside those words was almost comical. She thought she was coming home. She didn't realize she was walking into the end. The next evening, the sound of her keys in the lock felt different, like the opening beat of a finale I had been rehearsing in silence. Lisa came in, suitcase rolling behind her, perfume clinging faintly to her clothes. She smiled when she saw me sitting on the couch, that same tired but practiced smile she always wore after trips. She leaned down to kiss my cheek, casual, routine, as if the last week hadn't been anything but work. I let her. My face didn't move. She started talking immediately, filling the air with details I hadn't asked for. How exhausting the flights were, how long the meetings dragged, how everyone was burned out. Her words sounded mechanical, rehearsed. She moved around the living room, straightening things that didn't need straightening, unpacking snacks from her carry-on, as if normalcy could be forced into place. I watched her. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask questions. I just let the silence stretch between her sentences until she started to falter, until she glanced at me and noticed the stillness. "You okay?" she asked finally, forcing a light tone. I nodded once, slowly, and reached for my phone on the coffee table. My thumb slid across the screen until the first photo appeared. Lisa laughing at the dinner table, leaning toward him. I turned the phone toward her. Her smile froze. I swiped. The second image appeared. His arm draped along the back of her chair. Another swipe. His hand brushing hers on the street. Another. His arm around her shoulders at the long table. Another. The dance. His hand steady at her waist while she twirled, eyes lit up in a way she hadn't looked at me in months. Each image landed like a stone dropped in still water, rippling outward into the silence between us. Lisa didn't speak at first. She just stared. Her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. I could see the exact moment she realized these weren't one-offs, weren't coincidences. They were a pattern, a story she couldn't edit. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "It's not what it looks like." I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed the phone back on the table, screen still lit with the last photo. Then I looked at her and said, "You're right. It's worse." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever heard. She didn't move. She didn't know where to go. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't the one scrambling to hold us together. I was the one letting go. Lisa stood there, clutching the handle of her suitcase like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes darted from me to the phone, then back again. I didn't move. I didn't offer her a lifeline. I let the silence press down until she cracked under it. Her first attempt was weak. It was just team bonding. You know how close-knit we are at work. I didn't respond. My face stayed calm, my hands folded in my lap. She tried again. Her voice sharper now, almost defensive. "You're overthinking it. Everyone was drinking, everyone was having fun. You're twisting this into something it's not." Still, I stayed silent. The weight of her own words hung in the air, collapsing under their emptiness. Finally, her tone shifted. The bravado slipped, and the nervous cracks began to show. Okay, maybe I got too comfortable, but it didn't mean anything. That was when I leaned forward, picked up the phone, and scrolled back to the video of her dancing. I tapped play. The grainy hotel bar lights flickered across her face, her smile wide, her body leaning into his touch as though it belonged there. I turned the screen toward her again. "Does that look like nothing?" I asked quietly. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she wasn't smug, she wasn't rehearsed. She was scared. She sat down across from me, her posture collapsing, and buried her face in her hands. I could hear her breath shaking.
The sound of a woman trying to grasp for an excuse that didn't exist. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she whispered eventually. That sentence told me everything. She wasn't denying anymore. She wasn't saying I was wrong. She was admitting it, in her own sideways way.
And that was the moment I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not rage, but relief. The guessing, the second guessing, the knots in my stomach. Gone. The truth was here, sitting across from me, with tears starting to slip between her fingers. I stood up, slowly, and she lifted her head to look at me. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "Please, don't leave," she said, her voice trembling. But I had already decided. I didn't pace, I didn't slam doors, I didn't shout the way I always imagined a scene like this would go. Instead, I stood there, steady, my voice low and even, like I was reading something I had already rehearsed in my head 100 times. "It's over, Lisa," I said. Her face crumpled at the words. She shook her head quickly, like she could undo them by refusing to accept them. "No, no, wait, please. You don't mean that. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can—" I cut her off with a look. Calm, measured, the same look I'd been holding all week while I built my silent case against her. "There's nothing left to fix," I said. "You didn't lose yourself. You just gave yourself to someone else, and you thought I wouldn't notice." She flinched like I'd struck her. Tears streaked her cheeks, but I didn't move toward her. I didn't offer comfort. That part of me, the husband who wanted to shield her, to make her feel safe, was gone. She started bargaining then, her words stumbling over themselves. "It was just a mistake. I didn't think. I didn't mean. He doesn't matter. You matter. You always matter." But the thing was, she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for herself, for what she stood to lose. And I could see it written all over her face. The panic wasn't about love. It was about consequences. I sat back down on the couch, letting her words wash over me without reaction. And that silence, heavier than any fight could have been, made her crumble further. Finally, I spoke, and my voice was steady, final. "You made your choice a long time ago. This isn't me leaving you, it's me catching up to reality." Her tears slowed, confusion flickering in her eyes, like she realized she had no weapon left. She couldn't fight with anger, she couldn't win with charm, she couldn't twist the truth because it was staring her in the face. And so, she just sat there, small, broken, staring at the floor. I stood, walked to the door, and said the last words I would ever say to her in that house. "You don't need to explain. You just need to pack." Then I left her in the silence that had been growing between us for months. And for the first time, it felt like mine. After that night, the house didn't feel the same. It wasn't just empty, it was cleansed. The air felt lighter, even though the weight of ending a marriage sat heavy on my shoulders. I realized then that the hardest part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the lies, the performance, the months of distance, excuses, and silence that make you question your own worth before you finally see the truth staring back at you. She had told me she was too tired, too busy, not in the mood. She had sworn it wasn't about me. But in the end, it was never about me. It was about him. About the thrill, the attention, the escape. And yet, when the moment of truth came, I didn't need to scream. I didn't break things or curse her name or demand every detail of her betrayal. The silence did the work. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Walking away without yelling, without giving her the drama she probably expected, was its own kind of victory. Because when someone betrays you like that, they want you to unravel. They want you to fight so they can say, "See, he's crazy. He's the problem." I didn't give her that out. I gave her the one thing she couldn't twist: my calm, my clarity, my silence. I didn't lose myself in her betrayal. She lost me in it. And if there's one lesson I carry forward, it's this: you can't control what people do behind your back, but you can control how you answer when the truth comes out. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't fire, it's ice. So, that's how my marriage ended. Not in a screaming match, not in violence, not in begging, but in silence. Cold, heavy, undeniable silence. And in that silence, I finally found myself again.